Piazza, and I'm the Program Manager for Digital Gov University. And today we have two outstanding speakers. And I just want to welcome Howard Kramer and Kathy Walden. Together combined, they have over 25 years of experience in the field of accessibility. And they come to us today from the University of Colorado at Boulder. And before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that USA.gov has agreed to participate in this webinar by allowing their website to be used as a demonstration for some of these tools. And USA.gov is committed, of course, to accessibility and making sure their content on their site is accessible to everyone. So they're working closely with Kathy and Howard and their accessibility guru, Angela Hooker, to make sure that the things that are found on the website are corrected. So we just wanted to put that out there. This is certainly not a game of gotcha, but we are working together to make sure that the site is the best that it can be. So Kathy and Howard, thank you again, and take it away.
Great, thanks. So today we're going to be talking about how to use assistive technology to comply with Section 508. To get started, we're going to just have a couple poll questions. The first one is true or false. Can you meet Section 508 without testing with assistive technology?
It looks like we had 56% of the folks say false and 44% say true.
All right. If we look at Section 508, 1194.31 is the functional performance criteria, which states that for any product, there must be at least one way for users with disabilities to interact with the product. This includes users who are blind, users who are visually impaired, people who are deaf, hearing impaired, speech impaired, and physically impaired. And for these users to interact effectively with the site and have at least one way, they will be using assistive technology to interact with your digital content. And so you do need to provide the ability for them to use the assistive technology, and we do need to ensure that assistive technology does work with our digital content, whether that be websites or videos or documents, whatever content we're putting up online. So the answer is false. You do need to test with assistive technology. All right, next question. True or false? People who use a screen reader cannot see the computer screen.
Wow, it looks like 90% of the folks said false and 10% said true.
All right. Well, the answer is false. Not everybody who uses a screen reader is completely blind. In fact, many people who are legally blind do have some vision and can see parts of the screen. Many users also with low vision will use a screen reader, and often they'll do that in conjunction with a screen magnifier. So both, if you look at the leading screen reader that's out there, which is JAWS, JAWS and Zoom Text or JAWS and Magic work very well together. So often we will have users who are using multiple assistive technology, and we cannot make the assumption that a person who's using a screen reader will not see the screen. All right, last poll question. True or false? If you comply with the Section 508 standards, you'll meet the WCAG 2.0 guidelines.
Also, folks, feel free to vote by typing your answer in the chat box, and we will take them into consideration also. Okay, it looks like the majority of folks said false on this one at 62%, and 38% said true.
All right. Well, the answer is not as clear with this one. Most of the time, if you do comply with Section 508, you probably will not comply with everything that is in WCAG 2.0. It really depends on the individual site and what has been done. It also usually depends on how much testing has been done with assistive technology. The guidelines that are out there for whether that be Section 508 or the WCAG Web Content Accessibility Guidelines really help us understand what we need to do in order to make our sites work with assistive technology and be usable for people with disabilities. And so if, depending on how much testing that you've done with assistive technology or with users with disabilities, you may or may not already meet the WCAG 2.0 guidelines. The reason I wanted to bring this up today is because the Section 508 refresh is in its final stages. Most likely next year we will have a new version of Section 508, and it will most likely require the compliance with the WCAG 2.0, and there's 3 levels of compliance, A, AA, and AAA, and they're looking at AA level of some of the big differences between Section 508 and the WCAG 2.0 guidelines is in the actual requirements or the success criteria. WCAG 2.0 focuses on user needs, and it's not technology. So you will not see guidelines that are specific to software or to web or to telecommunications. But what you will see is a number of success criteria that is technology independent, and then underneath each of those success criteria is a set of techniques on how you can accomplish that depending on which technology that you're using. The WCAG guidelines focus on making sure that the text is readable and understandable, that content appears and operates in predictable ways. It helps users avoid and correct mistakes. It gives users enough time to read and use the content. It helps users navigate and find content, and it makes all functionality available from a keyboard. So if we look at each of the different success criteria and look at the, what each of those individual items are, it provides more specific guidelines than Section 508 on how to make the system accessible for users with disabilities. So for example, 2.4.2 is page title, and it states that there must be a descriptive page title for users so that a screen reader user, for example, coming to the site will know what the page is from the title. There's also items as far as info and relationships. That's probably one of the biggest things that has a lot of different requirements built into it. But this is all about making sure that the structure of the page is organized in a way that's going to make sense, that we're using, for example, unordered lists for list items and navigation bars, making sure that we've got good heading structure and that headings are marked up as headings. There's also very specific requirements for keyboard access, looking at not just being able to interact with the keyboard, but specifically that there's a focus indicator, that you're not going to get trapped anywhere on the screen, so that if you're tabbing through, you can go through and you can go through the page forwards and you can go backwards using Shift-Tab, and you're not going to get stopped anywhere or stuck on the page. Looking at the text of links and making sure that you can determine the link purpose from the context in which it's in the page. There's also items in there about valid code, making sure that all user interface controls are usable and understandable, providing the name, role, and value. And this in particular is very important, especially with our websites today and how they're becoming more and more interactive, and we got a lot more rich internet controls. So there's a number of items under WCAG 2.0 that you won't see specifically in Section 508, which helps developers, it helps designers, it helps anybody who's involved in creating digital content to really understand what you need to do in order to make something accessible. I just want to stop for a minute and ask you, what comes to your mind when you hear the words digital accessibility? What is accessibility? Just stop and think for a minute. And what comes to your mind when you think about those two words? Digital accessibility, in my mind, ensures that all audiences can use your digital communications to find information and interact with content. When I've said that statement, one thing I haven't talked about is specifically people with disabilities, but we're really talking about all audiences. When we're looking at sites today, we're often interacting with sites on mobile devices, we're interacting with sites on our desktops, on our laptops, we are sometimes on the metro, sometimes we're in our homes, sometimes we're in the office. We're accessing content everywhere we go, in all different places and all different devices. And many times, all of us, whether you have a disability or whether you don't have a disability, get into situations that we face challenges, the same challenges that people with disabilities face. And so digital accessibility to me is not just about making sure that people with disabilities can interact with digital content, but that it's all audiences, no matter how we're interacting with our sites today. So what does it really mean to be accessible? It means that it works with the tools and assistive technology that people with disabilities use. The ultimate goal is to have a product that is usable by everyone, including people with disabilities. And it's not just about compliance with the guidelines and standards. The guidelines and standards are really only a way to give us some guidelines, some pathway on how to make something accessible. If I just said, okay, go ahead and make this document, make this website, make this video accessible, you don't have anything to go off of. You don't really know what's required in order to do that. And the guidelines are simply that. They give you a roadmap on what you need to do in order to make something accessible, but it doesn't mean that it's going to work perfectly in all situations for people with disabilities. When we talk about people with disabilities, we're talking about people who are blind, people who have low vision, who are deaf or hard of hearing, people with mobility or dexterity impairments, people with cognitive impairments. Do you really know who all your users are? Often we think about interacting with our websites, with our digital content in the way that we personally interact with sites, but many users interact with our sites much differently than we do, than a specific user does. Users with disabilities will use assistive technology, and assistive technology is really any device or method that helps a person with a disability function effectively in daily life. And so this could be a user who is blind who interacts with their computer using a screen reader. And a screen reader is a device that produces an auditory version of what a visual user would see on the screen. And so when we're looking at testing for accessibility, we really need to be testing with the assistive technology just like we test with browsers today. You wouldn't launch a site today, a website today, or a web application today without testing it in Firefox, with Internet Explorer, with Chrome, with whatever other browsers out there. You'd be testing with those tools because you know that your users are going to be using them. And the same thing with when we look at the tools that people with disabilities use. The tools, the assistive technology, the software programs simply produce the underlying code in an alternate format that those users can use and interact with. So just like a browser takes the underlying code and produces a visual version of the screen, a user who's using an assistive technology, that assistive technology will read the underlying code and produce an alternate version for them in a version of the site that they can interact with. So when we look at testing, we should be including assistive technology in our testing. When you're doing testing with assistive technology, it's very important that we've already gone through Section 508 and WCAG 2.0, those technical accessibility requirements that give us that roadmap on how to make something accessible, making sure that we followed those guidelines, that making sure that we've done our best to think about the things that would need to be done, need to be in place in order for the assistive technology to work. There's many tools that you can use, such as the toolbars, the Wave toolbar, the Web Accessibility toolbar, Web Developer toolbar. There's different favorites like Jim Thatcher's favorites. All of these are excellent tools to help uncover technical accessibility issues. It's also very important as you're doing and looking at compliance with Section 508 and the WCAG 2.0 guidelines to make sure that you're testing with a screen reader. Testing with a screen reader at this time will help uncover some of those things that the toolbars and the favorites won't uncover. And most of the time when you're finding issues that are in a screen reader such as JAWS, it'll also be problems in the other assistive technology. So if you've gone through in this first step and made sure that you're compliant with the accessibility guidelines and that you've done some initial testing with a screen reader, whether that be JAWS or NVDA or any of the other screen readers that are out there, then you'll be ready to look at testing with assistive technology and seeing if there's going to be issues that a person with low vision or a person with a mobility impairment would face if they went to your website. One of the reasons you also want to do this is because if you don't have technical compliance, you could be uncovering issues when you're testing with assistive technology that could be confusing, or you may end up trying to fix something that really is more of a simple fix in your site, and you can actually go around in circles where you're trying to make it work in all the different assistive technology, and you make a change here, but then you break it in something else. So making sure that you have a solid foundation and making sure that you've got accessibility compliance from a technical standpoint, that the code is written in a way that is going to provide the information to assistive technology first, then you can get into actually testing with the assistive technology and making sure that it does work. Often I get questions, well, what browser should I use? What assistive technology should I be using for testing? And that's going to depend on what site you're looking at. You want to look at who your users are. Look at your browser statistics. What browsers are currently being used? Refer to some statistics on assistive technology uses. WebAIM does some excellent surveys each year, and you can go up to the webaim.org website, and they've got their statistics from last year. They run these every year. But look at what the trends are. JAWS is still the leading screen reader, but over the last couple of years, we've seen that VoiceOver is gaining in popularity. And so really knowing what people with disabilities are using will help determine what we should be testing as far as assistive technology. You'll also want to look and make sure that you're testing with the browsers that are supported with the assistive technology. If you look at, for example, JAWS, you'll want to be testing in Internet Explorer and Firefox because those are the two browsers that have the greatest support with JAWS. Now you could test with Chrome, but there's still issues in Chrome and with JAWS that things aren't going to work as well, and it's not fully supported. So if you did testing with Chrome, there's nothing that you probably could do in your underlying code to make it work better, and those are things that are going to have to be fixed in the browser or with the assistive technology. After you've determined what browsers and assistive technology you're going to use, you'll want to actually test with the assistive technology. You'll want to look at what the scope of your testing is going to be. And later in the presentation, we're going to be talking about some of the W3C way resources that are available. There is a methodology for testing for WCAG 2.0 compliance that will give you a good roadmap on how to pick key pages and functions within your application to test. But you really want to start by testing those key pages and functions in your site. So look at your browser stats, figure out which pages are used most frequently, and you'll want to start testing with that. Often we've got time restrictions or budget constraints. We can't test absolutely everything or every page with all of the assistive technology, but we want to make sure that we've got the key pages and the critical functions and really a representative sample of pages to test so that we can identify things that would be problems on the pages that we're testing, but also in other pages so that we can fix those. I also want to caution you on testing with assistive technology if you're not very familiar with the assistive technology itself. Ideally, we would be testing with users who use the assistive technology daily or people who have an in-depth knowledge of the assistive technology. If you are a beginner user of the assistive technology, you may uncover things that you think are issues, but they're actually user issues of the assistive technology. You don't know how to use the assistive technology in a way that a person with a disability would use, so you're going to uncover things that are not actually issues. So just a little word of caution there. On the interactive accessibility, my company website, I've just posted a bunch of checklists and also the command reference sheets for the different assistive technology that we'll be talking about today. And so if you'd like to get a list, often they're one-pagers, but it'll give you a starting point and an actual checklist for the items that we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to go over just briefly and highlight some things that you can start testing for the different types of disabilities using the different assistive technology. This is not a complete list, but it's really a starter place for you to get started in testing with assistive technology. And again, we are going to be referencing the USA.gov website. There was some issues that we found during the testing, and we are working with them to fix those. But it'll give you a good idea of what the challenges that you can face when you've got a site that is very accessible, but when you're testing with the assistive technology, you uncover some additional items. So with that, I'd like to get started into talking about each of the individual assistive technology that we can use for testing. Users who are blind will use tools called screen readers that produce an auditory version of the content on the screen. Screen readers are available both on the PC and the Mac platform and on all different mobile devices. So for example, Android and any iOS device, your iPhone, your iPad, all have screen readers available. On the PC, we've got three kind of leading screen readers, JAWS, Window Eyes, and NVDA. NVDA is a free screen reader, so if you don't have a license for one of the screen readers, you can download NVDA for free. On the Mac platform, VoiceOver is built into the operating system. It is available in the ease of access settings, and you can turn it on and start using it. On the mobile devices, if you look at your iPhone and your iPad, you also have VoiceOver available, and that's under General Accessibility Settings, and you can turn that on from there. On Android, we've got the TalkBack screen reader that is also available for free and is built into the operating system. Some users who are blind will also use a refreshable Braille device. This refreshable Braille device simply outputs the spoken voice that the screen reader is outputting to Braille, so they can hear it and they can also read it on the refreshable Braille device. When you're testing with a screen reader, it's always good to test with the default settings. Don't assume that a user with who's using a screen reader is going to change the settings or turn something on or off in order to get it to work well with your website or digital content. You want to start testing with the latest version of the screen reader that is available. Older versions may have bugs, and also different versions will produce different results. And so if you start testing with the latest version, it'll help you figure out, if you start testing with the latest version and with a lower version, it'll help you determine what might be an issue within the assistive technology versus an issue in the underlying code that you could fix. It's also important to test in multiple browsers. You will get different results in testing with, for example, Internet Explorer and Firefox with JAWS. Sometimes you may not notice too many differences. Sometimes there will be issues in one of the browsers that you don't see in some of the other ones. And so it is important to test with multiple browsers, given the browsers that are actually supported by the assistive technology. So a couple steps that you can do to get started in testing with a screen reader. The first thing that is very useful is to just simply listen to the page. If you're a sighted user, you can track the speech to the output, to the visual view, so listening to the audio and making sure that that nothing's being missed, that there's content that's not being read that is shown on the screen. You'll also want to make sure that the content is in a logical order. You'll want to check the alternate text for images. Does it actually make sense? Is it repeating the same text that's on the screen? You'll also want to look for words that may be mispronounced. Sometimes we have spelling errors on our sites. Sometimes we've got capitalization of words, and those words then don't get spoken in the right way by a screen reader. So I'm going to play just a clip of the USA.gov website. As you're listening to this, follow along, listen for anything that may be confusing, and listen for things that are also done well, that make it easier to understand.
USA.gov:(U.S) Government's official web portal page has 5 regions, 13 headings, and 50 links. USA.gov:(U.S) Government's official web portal. Same page link skip to main content. Navigation region list of 6 items visited link home. Link FAQs link site index link email your question link chat. Link free publications list and list of 2 items link get email updates. Link change text size list and navigation region and link. Español visitor link. Index. Search region search edit as pop-up search the government ... search button search region end heading level 3 follow as : list of 4 items bullet link graphic Facebook bullet link graphic Twitter bullet link graphic YouTube bullet visited link graphic log list end link 1-800-fed-info left parent 333-4636 right parent navigation region list of 5 items bullet heading level 2 link services bullet visited heading level 2 link blog bullet heading level 2 link topics bullet heading level 2 link government agencies bullet heading level 2 link contact government list and navigation region end. Same page link numbers scope target main region previous featured topic button graphic list of 1 items bullet heading level 2 link holiday travel resources link graphic get resources for road and air travel link if you're traveling during the holidays get the latest on traffic conditions and airport delays link travel tips list and next featured topic button graphic list of 3 items 1 button 2 button 3 button list and main region end heading level 3 popular topics list of 6 items 1 link jobs 2 link A-Z list of agencies 3. Link benefits and grants 4. Link unclaimed money 5. Link change of address 6. Link more topics list and...
All right, so that was the beginning part of the website with the screen reader. A few things that were done extremely well on this site that will make it much easier, and it made it much easier to kind of follow the text, is that the links were defined as a list. And so you can easily hear how many items are in that list, and then it went through each of those different links. When it got to the Spanish link, the Español link on the site, it read that in Spanish. It didn't try to read that in English. So we know that that was coded correctly and that it was there. The navigation links, as it was reading through there, the main navigation links for services, blog, topic, government agencies, it was a little bit hard to kind of follow that because those were all marked up as headings. So they were also list items and headings. So there was some additional information there. There was also a skip target link in there that was red, that was for the skip to main content link that was read as skip target, and that might be a little bit confusing to a user who's listening to the page. But overall, this page was pretty good. The links 1, 2, 3, pay attention to those. So they were in this view, as we were listening to the page, those were just announced as 1, 2, 3. Interacting with the page, listen to those links and see how they are read. The USA.gov website has done some coding in there to actually make those much easier for users and to add some context to those. All right, so the next step is to interact with the page. Interacting with the page, you want to make sure that you can reach all of the page elements with the keyboard. A user who is blind or a user who's low vision will most likely not be using the mouse, and they will rely on the keyboard for interacting with the page. And so you'll want to put your mouse aside and tab through each of the elements. Listen to how those elements are announced. If it is a rich internet control, so for example, if we had a tab control or we had some context menu on the page, you want to make sure that those are announced correctly, that they are announced as a tab structure, as a context menu or something like that, with the both with the name and with the state. So if you've got a tab, you'll want to know which tab is selected. So there's a lot of information that you can get when you're interacting with the page with the screen reader. So we're going to go through and play a little clip of the screen reader interacting on the USA.gov site. This is not a complete test. We should also be testing to make sure we can activate each of these links. It's very important as you're testing with the screen reader. You may think, oh, I've already tested keyboard access with just the keyboard. I don't need to test it with a screen reader because I know that every link can be accessed with the keyboard alone. But you can find issues where something will work with just the keyboard, but it will not work with when you've got the screen reader on and you're using a keyboard.
USA.gov:/U.S. Government's official web portal - Windows Internet Explorer. USA.gov:/tab. Skip to main tab. Home visited link tab. FAQs link tab. Site index link tab. Email your question link tab. Chat link tab. Free publications link tab. Get email updates link tab. Change text size link tab. Español link tab. Index visited link tab. Region search edit type of text tab. Search button tab. Facebook link graphic tab. Twitter link graphic tab. YouTube link graphic tab. Blog visited link tab. 1-800 tab. Services heading level 2 tab. Blog heading level 2 tab. Topics heading level 2 link tab. Government agencies heading level 2 link tab. Contact government heading level 2 link tab. Previous featured topic button tab. Holiday travel resources. Get resources for road and air travel if you're traveling during the holidays. Get the latest on traffic conditions and airport delays. Travel tips heading level 2 link tab. Next featured topic button tab. Holiday travel resources button tab. 2 button tab. Give the gift of service button tab. Job.
All right, so now when we got to the 1, 2, 3 links, 1 and 3 were not announced as 1 and 3. They were actually announced with a more descriptive link name. Number 2 had just a minor coding issue. That's why it didn't get announced with the actual name. But that's one technique where you can actually provide additional information based on what's on the page to make those links more descriptive and easier to understand. So that was something that was done extremely well on the site. One thing that we didn't cover is that the USA.gov Government Made Easy logo is announced as index. And the reason it was announced as index is the USA.gov logo is as a background image, and there was no text alternative for that image. And so the USA.gov website is actually a responsive design, and we're not getting into how to test responsive in this webinar today. But because of that and how it was coded, there is an image with alternate text, but it's only available on the mobile and the tablet site. So that's one thing that would need to be updated in here so that it works both on the tablets and on the desktop. The next thing that you'll want to do is check navigation methods. And by that, I mean test the skip links. Make sure that the skip links work. Make sure it goes to the main content and the next main content is being read. Go in here and look at the heading structure. Make sure that the headings are marked up correctly. And in many of the screen readers, there's different function keys that you can do to pull up a list of headings, to pull up a list of landmarks on the page. When we reviewed the landmarks on this page, there's 2 navigation item lists that are listed here, which is great. Also the main content and the banner, so users can skip to the major sections of this page. But one thing that is a little bit more difficult is that those regions were announced just as navigation. So one way to improve this is to actually name those navigation areas, such as main navigation, or give it a more descriptive name so that users know what type of navigation they'd actually be navigating to. So if they heard navigation landmark and navigation landmark, they'd actually know which navigation landmark they'd actually get to. So that's 3 things that you can do for screen readers. When we're looking at users with low vision, as I mentioned earlier, some users will use screen readers in conjunction with the screen magnifiers. A screen magnifier simply provides tools to magnify the screen and also to change different settings. You can change your color schemes, you can change your cursors, you can make your mouse cursor much larger. You can add other focus indicators to make it much easier to read the text and to interact with the content. Some users will not use a screen magnifier, but they'll use alternate style sheets, or they may use the browser functions to magnify the screen. When you're looking at testing for users with low vision, you'll want to start with the browser. Magnify the screen to 200%. Disable the style sheets and look to see if the page is confusing or misleading. Review the visible focus indicator that is provided by the browser. Because this is browser dependent, you will want to check in all the different browsers to make sure that there is a focus indicator on all of the active elements, so all the links and all the buttons that are on the screen. When you're testing with the screen magnifiers, you will want to test with the available settings and features that are in the screen magnifier. Most screen magnifiers, such as Zoom Text and Magic, have speech built in, so you can test with speech. There's a web finder in Zoom Text that you can identify issues that are with forms and other elements on the page. You can check the focus indicators, the color enhancements, and you can also change the different color schemes within there. Again, make sure that you test with the assistive, with the browsers that are supported by the assistive technology. The first step in testing with a screen magnifier is to test the different color schemes. And here you're seeing the actual invert brightness under Zoom Text setting. You want to make sure that the text is readable. You'll also want to check to make sure that the text, the elements do not disappear from view. And so when we tested with the different color schemes on the USA.gov website, it worked very well. Things were very readable. Nothing disappeared from view. And so the color schemes that were available could be used within Zoom Text and with Magic with the site. The next thing that you'll want to do is magnify the screen. When you magnify the screen, you'll want to go through and look at the page. Look at the layout. One of the biggest issues that I find is we're always trying to add white space to our sites, and sometimes we use excessive white space, or we've got a lot of white space before another set of links. When you magnify the screen, you're going to see even more white space. And so in usability testing that I've done, that's one of the complaints is that there's too much white space, or there's too much and they don't know that something else is there, or they'll miss content because they think that the page is ended, but there's actually still content that's there. You'll also want to make sure that the font is readable. The screen magnifiers have special font enhancing capabilities, and if your font is defined correctly and is a typical web font, then the font smoothing will actually happen on the site. So when you magnify the screen, your text should not be jagged. It should be crisp and clear. You'll also want to read the page with zoom text. You want to make sure that content is read in the correct order and that words are not mispronounced. I'm going to show you a short demo of how zoom text reads the page.
Search or enter address. Zoom text user interface. Home focus site index email your question chat free publications get email updates change text size SPO search follow us Facebook Twitter YouTube blog 1-800 FED info 333-4636 services blog topics government agencies contact government previous featured topic holiday mailing options and deadlines. See mailing options and holiday shipping deadlines for the U.S. Postal Service. See mailing deadlines and find out how to print your own label and schedule a pickup. Visit USPS.com. Next featured topic.
Okay, so a couple of things that we noticed that were a little bit different from reading with a screen magnifier from a screen reader is that it puts a red outline around the item that is being read so you can follow along as it is reading. One thing that based on from looking at the site from a day ago to last night, there is a new feature on here for holiday mailing options and deadlines. And when we were reading this, you notice that there is alternate text on that image that is very similar to the text that is right next to the image. So that text was very repetitive. It didn't need to be repetitive. So one thing that you could do just to improve the overall user experience here when reading the page is to actually make that a decorative kind of image without alt text so that it gets ignored by the readers. Another thing that you can do to check for any issues with reading the text is to use Zoom Text Doc Reader. If you use Zoom Text Doc Reader, it will put the text into a separate window, and you can look for text that is repeated. So you want to check to make sure that the text is not repeating and that things generally look right and are being would be read correctly. The next thing that you'll want to do, just like we talked about with the screen reader, is to actually interact with the page. Before you do this, you want to go into the settings and you'll want to change the pointer settings and change it to a larger pointer. You'll want to change the cursor enhancement because you want to make sure that that works within the form fields. You'll also want to change the focus indicator. I like to use the red box that shows up. And what I'm looking at is to make sure that that red box is not going to obstruct the view of actually reading some of the text that's there. So there's a number of different things that you can do, but setting those settings and then interacting with the page is important. And you should be testing at either a 2x power or above. You don't want to test with a power that's less than that. You want to have experienced the site as a user who would actually be magnifying the page. When we're looking at people who are deaf and hard of hearing, there's really no assistive technology that they're using that they'd use on their computer. They may have a hearing aid or other device to help them hear, but we're really looking at content that is available for users in an alternative way. So for audio content, you'll want to make sure that there's captions for video or transcripts for audio only, and that if there is sound notifications, you want to check to make sure that there's some sort of alternative for that sound notification. For mobility impaired, we're really talking about users who can't grip or maneuver the mouse. They often rely on the keyboard alone or will use some alternative methods for input, and all of these really mimic the keyboard. So the first thing that we want to do is to test with the keyboard. It is important to test in multiple browsers because you can get different results if you test in Internet Explorer or in Firefox, for example. You want to make sure that you can reach all the different active elements, that there is a focus indicator visible, that you can activate them with the keyboard, that the tab order is logical, and that the keyboard focus doesn't get trapped anywhere. Another thing that you can do is to test with Dragon Naturally Speaking. You'll want to set some additional settings to optimize it for use with web content, in particularly in Internet Explorer. If you are testing with Dragon Naturally Speaking, highly recommend trying with Internet Explorer first. It does support Firefox, but it is a lot more buggy, and you really need some more plugins in order to get it to work effectively with Firefox. So when we're looking at testing with Dragon Naturally Speaking, you'll want to test the speech commands in order to interact with the page and make sure that they're going to work. You want to make sure that you can reach all the active elements and that you can activate them with speech. So you want to use the navigation commands, but you'll also want to call out links and buttons by name. One of the biggest issues that I find when I'm testing with Dragon Naturally Speaking is that the buttons and the links will not have the alternate text for the button, for example, is not what's visible on the button text. And so you don't actually, can't actually activate that with speech because the coding underneath says it's one thing and the visual view says something else. Overall, the USA.gov site did fairly well with with Dragon. I'm going to just share a very brief clip with you right now. Wake up. Dragon sidebar. Press tab. Press tab. Tab 3. Scroll down. Scroll up. Tab 5. Press tab. Click FAQs. 1. All right, so one of the things that you probably noticed is that when I said FAQs, there was 2 links on the main page that had the FAQ link text in it. When that happens, Dragon Naturally Speaking will put a number next to each of the items, and you can actually use speech in order to select the individual item. So as you're going through, one of the most important things to do with Dragon is just to go and use the speech commands. Use it. If you want to get a list of all of the different commands that you can do, notice when I first started Dragon, I said Dragon sidebar. This will pull up a list of all of the speech commands that you can use with the application that currently has focus. The other thing that you'll want to check is that the keyboard shortcuts don't interfere with the speech input with Dragon Naturally Speaking. One of the biggest problems when Google did their redesign was that they had single key command strokes. So if you pressed a single key, like I forget what some of them were, but K or H, it did different commands. But the problem was is that when you dictated the letters for speech, and did spelling to enter in information, you'd actually activate those speech commands. So Google actually implemented a way to turn on and off the keyboard shortcuts so that users who are using Dragon Naturally Speaking would be able to interact with Gmail. Very careful about keyboard shortcuts and make sure that they don't interfere with the actual with the speech with Dragon Naturally Speaking. I don't want to forget about cognitive impairments. Often this is a disability group which encompasses a lot of different types of disabilities, from learning disabilities to dyslexia, that we often forget about. And it can affect people's memory, problem solving, attention, reading, linguistics and verbal comprehension, math comprehension, and visual comprehension. These users will use tools such as text-to-speech, like Kurzweil 3000, Read and Write Gold, Natural Reader, Win, Text Read Aloud. All of these will read content on the page. And as it's reading content, it will highlight that content that is on the page. And as it goes through, it will read everything. It also reads hidden content. So if you've got content that's hidden using CSS display properties like we do with responsive design, all of that text will be read. You'll want to make sure that it's not disruptive and that there's not error messages being read or something that would be really confusing to these users. So it's important to read the page with Kurzweil as we're going through, or Read and Write Gold or one of the other tools to ensure that just the text is not going to be confusing. And this will be different than reading it with the screen reader or the screen magnifier because it reads a lot more of the text that's hidden on the page. So just a few challenges of testing with assistive technology. A lot of people ask, well, how much testing do I need to do? You know, I've got a limited time, I've got limited budget, resources. You really need to look at what the, you know, what your users are using and what you can do in order to get the biggest benefit. And a lot of the times that's testing with screen readers first, because the issues that you find within the screen reader are issues that you'll find with the other assistive technology. So if you fix the issues with the screen reader, you're going to fix a lot of the issues that other users will have as well. Another challenge is how to fix the issues. You know, is this an issue in the code? Is it an issue with the browser? Is this an issue in the assistive technology? And you want to make sure that if you're fixing that issue in the code or working around something, making sure that it doesn't cause issues in the other assistive technology. And this is really where having an in-depth knowledge about the assistive technology and doing some detective work and finding out where that problem is will determine on how you fix that issue and what you do to fix it, or if you, you know, determine that you shouldn't be fixing it because it actually is something that is a problem in one of the browsers or otherwise. The W3C has a number of tools and resources available that you can use to help identify technical issues and get more information on what you can do from the technical side. I'm going to turn it over to Howard now, who's going to just show you a few of the items that are available under the W3CY website.
Thank you, Kathy, and let me know if there's any problem with hearing my audio. Otherwise, I'll assume that I'm at a good level. So there's not too much time left. Maybe it was mentioned that we might be able to run a little bit over, so I'll try to anyway talk quickly so that we do have some time for questions. So Kathy mentioned a number of tools provided by the Web Access Initiative, and I wanted to go over those. In particular, two tools that I think are particularly very helpful, and that's you're seeing that on the screen right now. One is called Easy Checks, and the other one is called BAD, before and after demonstration. And they're kind of intertwined with one another, though you can use them separately. And Easy Checks is meant as I was actually work on the committee that helped put this together, though I didn't do the coding or the basic design. I mostly provided feedback and input. And the purpose of it was to really provide a simple, quick and easy way to do a first check of web accessibility. And I think that whether you're a novice or even, especially if you're a novice, but even if you're someone with experience, that can be, this can be particularly useful. So if we, the URL for this site is, you can see it up on the screen and actually on the title. And it also was provided in Kathy's PowerPoints, and we'll be providing it in an email that will follow this presentation. So the site starts with a table of contents, and we can move down to any area, and we picked the 10 or so areas that we thought were the most important, and also areas that we thought were pretty easy for even a novice to check with. It doesn't require looking at any of these does not require an extensive amount of technical expertise. So I can jump down to any item. The first thing you probably want to look at is using Easy Checks, the first section, and it tells you what tools you should have available for using it, and two tools that you'll want to have available, and I think that Kathy may not have mentioned them, but besides the Firefox browser and the Internet Explorer browser, you'll want to use something called the Web Developer extension for Firefox, and then also something called the Web Accessibility Toolbar for Internet Explorer. And both these tools will be really helpful when you're looking at the various features that you'll be checking for accessibility. And then there's a link, as I mentioned, to the before and after demo. I'll get into that a little bit later. And then there's more information about terminology and concepts related to assistive technology and to accessibility, in case that's an area that you're not very familiar with. So just to give you an example, I think I will just do maybe page title, because I'm looking at the time and it's 3 minutes to 10. So here, this item under page title sort of follows the model for all the other areas that that this tool covers. So it tells you about page title, where you'll find it, what it's used for. Then it tells you how to view the page titles in different browsers. We see an example up here of Firefox, where we see the different page titles for a number of pages that we have open. And an interesting side point is page title is not an item in 508, but it is an item on the most basic level of WCAG 2.0. So, and as Kathy mentioned, it's the title of a page is the first item that someone hears when they use a screen reader. So it is crucial, and it also has usability and findability issues. It's what a search engine will present when you do a search in Google or in Yahoo, and obviously it's what people will see when they have a number of pages open and they want to find out, let's say, go back to a certain page they were looking at. So again, this tool then tells you different ways to check for page titles, how to check for a page title with the Web Access Toolbar and using Internet Explorer. And then again, as with all these items, you can open up a section to learn more about page titles and understanding the success criteria under WCAG 2.0. So let me just, if I could, talk about image text alternatives, and I think this will be the last item I cover under this tool. So again, it also follows the format as above. It tells you what are text alternatives, what is a proper text alternatives. Kathy gave some examples of this, and we'll see in a minute an example that I'll show that, sometimes it can be very subtle and nuanced in terms of what is a proper alternative text and what isn't a proper alternative text. So again, and then it shows here the tools for looking at alternative text and for determining them. And I'll just show, actually go to the bad example because I would like you to see this resource. I think it's very helpful. So I can practice checking alt text in the before and after demonstration. And the way the before and after demonstration tool is set up, it's a website and a series of pages, is that it shows a poorly or an inaccessibly coded page, and then it'll show you an accessible coded page. So I can go to, right now I'm looking at the home page, and if I was looking at alt text, there's not much I really see from just looking at the page. If I select show annotations and my page changes, then I'll get a little bit more information. I'll be told what's wrong with each of these alt text examples. So for the main logo and the banner of the page, I get information that I have an image with incorrect text alternative. If I move down here, I'm told that I have an image without any text alternative. So if I wanted to actually see what the problem was, I'm going to hide the annotations, and then I'm going to go into one of the tools mentioned before, which is Firefox. And I'm going to go to that page. And here I have a number of toolbars on this installed in Firefox, but one of them is the Web Developers toolbar. So if I go to Images and go to Display Alt Attributes, I'll see the actual alt tags, I should say, alt text that are in this page. And we see the problem, let's say, for example, with the logo, is that there's too much information. You don't have to describe an image down to the pixel level, to be facetious. We don't have to describe it in detail. We just want to convey the important information. In this example, it might just be City Lights logo. And if we look at the rest of the page, we see that here, hopefully you can see my arrow moving over this area, we have a blank alt tag where we do need to have something that tells us that there's an image here, an image link for more information. Under here, I'll just mention that, again, it's usually recommended that we don't indicate just presentational items such as bullets. They're not really needed for the screen reader user, so that's an example where we would use what's called a null alt tag, which is alt equals quote, quote, with no space in between it. I'm going to go back to bad, and again, you can use bad, except for the title example, which is not really shown in the bad resource. You could look at all the other features talked about in the easy checks in the bad resource. And the nice thing about this is a lot of times we read about these different requirements, these different accessibility guidelines, but we're not really sure what it looks like. What is the difference between an accessible and an inaccessible page? And besides being a useful tool for checking websites, this also sort of teaches you the underlying issues, the underlying technology or features that actually cause problems. So this is also a very good learning tool, and bad in particular is very good for if you're teaching to a class, which is why I'm using it today. So I think with that, we're already 4 minutes over. I just wanted to make sure you knew about these two tools, and this sort of site in general has other. It has the conformance procedures, the methodology procedures talked about by Kathy. It has a number of other resources. So I did want to make sure you had that, and I think at this point I will let us turn it over to questions at this point.
Thank you so much, Howard and Kathy. Actually, there are no questions. I think that your presentation has been super thorough, and it's very fascinating. And I think, you know, we have some things on our punch list at Digital Gov University that we might want to take a look at. But again, I just want to thank you both for taking the time out of your busy schedules to present to our community. This is an area of great importance to everyone across federal government who's working on the web, obviously. And I wanted to remind folks who've attended today that you will be receiving an email with an evaluation survey. Please, those evaluations are important to us. We take stock in everything, all the feedback that you give us, and we try and make this program the best that it can be and as responsive as it can be. And also in that email, you'll find a special note from Kathy and Howard with some information, some other resources for you all, and I hope all the information useful. And just one more thing, we do have an accessibility community of practice, so there'll be information on finding out more about that community within the federal government and joining if interested. So again, thank you to everyone who joined today. Thank you to Kathy and Howard, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.